Just making sure everyone's signed up who wants to speak, because there are citizen comments. It may not say it on there, but we want to hear from you, okay? Everybody good? I lost my agenda. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Vernon's annotated civil statute, Article 625217, that the city of Smithville will conduct a special called council meeting January 28, 2025 at 5 p.m. in the council chambers of City Hall, 317 Main Street, Smithville, Texas. I call this meeting to order. Discussion and possible action on city council strategic initiatives for 2025. Councilman Jameson, please lead us.
Thank you, Mayor. To reiterate the purpose of the meeting tonight, this was a unanimous decision by council to discuss and establish priorities and processes for short-term strategic initiatives over the next 12 to 18 months. As the sponsor of the December agenda item that led to the special called meeting, I offered up an outline for tonight's meeting to help us achieve the published objective of creating a prioritized list of strategic initiatives. So the list, the starting point for items for consideration was available outside, or Jennifer has it at the table here if you haven't been able to pick one up. One of the things we discussed was the opportunity and need to get ahead of the budget process. For example, in order to be efficient and possibly cut down on the number of meetings we had last year. Another was to enhance and prioritize our economic development objectives and making sure the proper resources were allocated to achieve them. There are several other high-quality items for us to discuss, and I'm eager to get the discussion going. I appreciate the opportunity we have tonight to start what is hopefully an annual process of what I've called for a couple of years, kind of a phrase of getting better at all we do every day. This is not a critique of past performance, but a process of identifying what we need to prioritize and focus on to accomplish in the short term versus longer term planning, such as that provided by the comprehensive planning process. There are issues that need to be addressed now to put us in the best position possible. One example is how the enclave subdivision process has evolved recently. We need to have better tools in place to manage growth versus letting growth manage us. It's an opportunity to take what we've learned over the past year and make improvements to current processes or create new ones based on issues that have surfaced as we go about setting priorities and goals and perform our duty as a council to set policy for the city. I think over the last couple of years, we've gotten better at doing our work in a transparent environment and taking on the meaty issues we are faced with addressing every month and creating the tools, again, to manage growth versus allowing growth to manage us. I look forward to hearing my colleagues' thoughts before we get into the process tonight, if anyone has anything to add.
Mayor, I have something to add, please. This is Councilmember Jameson. This is your deal here? The one that's, yeah. Okay. Just that's all right. Just making
That's
sure.
what it was consolidated from feedback I received from other,
just two very quick
and from the public.
Two very quick comments from me personally. I supported the motion, as my colleagues did, to have this. I don't think within reason there's never too many times that we should sit and talk about things that are important to the town and do it in a public setting, specifically focused on that, as opposed to being part of a long agenda where it gets bogged down. So I'm thankful and glad that we're doing this. The second point I'll make is one Councilmember Jameson alluded to, which is I think it can be very helpful to separate out thinking about strategic initiatives as a standalone agenda item apart from the budget process, because in my 4 years of experience here, the budget process doesn't really get going until we get some numbers on tax proceeds from the county, and that's woefully close to the date at which we're required to approve a budget. So we end up finding ourselves doing a lot of talking at these meetings without a lot of substantive data on which to formulate opinions. And then we're asked to make some really tough choices in a really pretty compressed period of time when it's riddled with emotion. And I think this process of just focusing on strategic initiatives several months before the budget process should inform and help us when we come to the budget process. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, I agree with what Tom says. I also, being a new council person, I did not understand initially that when we submitted our projects for consideration early on, the short time frame in which we were supposed to have those completed or at least dig into them deep, because some of them, like mine was, one of them was researching additional services and how to generate more revenue for the rec center. That is not something you do in a couple of weeks. I'm just now getting with Jose. We're talking about it. We're going through it. There's some others that have some input on that. So that's kind of a longer process. And I agree that some of these projects just, they might be they might be considered for the budget. I get that, the monetary implications there, but I still think there needs to be more time to vet and research projects that aren't maybe even part of those council initiatives. So I welcome the opportunity as well.
Yeah, and I talked to the city secretary, Jennifer, earlier today, and in terms of us determining the actual process that we'll use tonight is, I guess we can go item by item from the list that we created and feedback that I gotten from the rest of you and some citizens who've reached out. If we go through the process and there's basically a sponsor or someone who's asked that this be put on the list so we can speak to each one. And then when it's over with, we do some sort of stack ranking process that we vote on later. I think you and I talked about, we may not be able to vote on anything tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you would be able to vote on each individual item because of the way it's written in the agenda. If you want something specific, I would put it on a future agenda. If you want more discussion or, I mean, but you can discuss and figure out your process, and then at the end, make that one motion. I make a motion to, whatever I don't know what your process is. I don't know what you're going to be talking about. So I'd hate to say,
Well, I mean, I was hoping that we would talk this through right now because we haven't done this before. So we can talk about each item, get some feedback, and if maybe, Madam Mayor, if we can be a little lenient with people in the audience, we don't have that many that might hear something that we talk about and have an opinion. So at the end of the process, we can decide if there are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 items that we do want to prioritize as something that we focus going forward. One of the caveats that I did put in here is that if we identify an item that we want to follow up on, that we need to determine some performance measures, some metrics that we associate with it and make it time constrained. And then from there, we can give direction to the city manager to prioritize, bring it up on the list for things that we would address either in the February or March meeting. And I don't know what y'all's thoughts on that might be.
Well, one of the things is some of the things you have listed here kind of already in the queue. They're being implemented. The impact fees, Robert has already said they're starting to work on. They're discussing that with Jason. And we knew from the beginning that was going to be anywhere from a 6-month to a year rollout. I think that's to me, that's already a priority. It's already moving forward. The PID discussion is going to be at 3 or 4 city council meetings. I don't think we go through this PID discussion without hearing a lot more about what we're going to be doing. Okay, I don't think that is already on there. As for the ordinances, I was talking with Jill, and I have a note here from Jerry from Langford. The initial zoning and ordinance review is currently in process, and they're supposed to bring that to us, I believe, in February. From the emails I've been reading, there are going to be 2 meetings about the comp plan in February, at least 1, maybe 2. It says public meeting 1 and public meeting 2, and it talks about a February timeline. So I believe those are going to be talked about. I do understand bringing them out and having them from consideration, but I don't want to do double work. If they're already fixing to present an initial zoning and ordinance and they've got a lot of stuff done, we should at least listen to what they have underway.
So back to the process, I guess before we dive into each item, if there are any other items, does anybody have anything they want to add to this starting point list? I mean, we just want to dive into these. And for instance, if we have the discussion about a potential PID policy or position statement, it might be that just we are saying to the council and the city manager that this is something that we want to move forward on because it's important that we have a statement. That's something we can discuss. But when we get through with each item, do
But
we
as far
want
as
to
the
rank
PID
those?
As far as the PID going on right now, Robert, the city manager, is in discussion with the lawyers, different people that are involved in PIDs. He's done a lot of research. So at this point, he is working on the PID. We haven't made any decisions on what we're going to do. We had a public hearing to get all the information out to the public, but as far as us,
No, I'm sorry, Mayor, this was more about, do we have a need for us publishing a policy statement? Not getting into, there are other cities who have gone forward. Had examples, I think, that we've gotten from a couple
Right.
of other towns. So the reason, and I'm not necessarily the one that put this on here, but the reason that we would discuss this if we choose to prioritize is to say we have a need to establish a policy statement from the city.
I think we're working on that.
Okay,
We had a meeting. Everybody came forward. We have more information and I believe it's being researched at this time.
okay.
So who do you want to call someone up here to speak on this now?
No, what I'm
No.
trying to establish right now is the process so that we get through discussing each item, that we find a way to rank it so that we decide what we want to move forward on as a recommendation for focus.
Can I make a couple comments here?
Sure.
One is I think the whole discussion about process and what we accomplish in an hour and a half tonight is one that's really daunting. It's hard to do because it's so all encompassing. I think from a process perspective, I think just the simple act of all of us talking openly in front of the public and listening to the public talk about things that occur to us that are important to this city is healthy. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to have any one, all, or a certain number of those things go on some list. It may be we all decide certain things do go on a list, but let's just have healthy dialogue amongst colleagues about things that we're thinking about. Some of them, at least the ones that are going to come from me, you're going to have heard before. And I'm going to repeat them because I think they're important for the city. I think that every year that goes by, growth gets closer and closer to impacting Smithville. And I think the Enclave is a real tangible example of that. There are other land plays. You see for sale signs going up. Anybody that drives around are seeing new signs go up on property. There's rumors about developers taking position. So clearly the expected growth down 71 spilling over from Bastrop into Smithville is starting to occur. So some of those things we've been talking about for several years are going to become more pertinent and more relevant. So for me, I love to listen to what other people think. What has just occurred to you that's important? And I've got 5 or 6 things. They're not going to be maybe the perfect check the box strategic. They're going to be just things that I gleaned from observation and from talking to people. So that's just my view is if we do nothing more than just have a really good open discussion for an hour and 15 minutes amongst us about what we think is important, I think it will be beneficial, at least for me.
So you okay
And
with?
I'm glad to go first or last or somewhere in the middle. So I'll let the mayor decide the order.
All right, you start it. Let's go.
You want me to start?
Somebody start.
We can just start at the top and discuss.
I got my own list. So what
Well,
I
bring
would
it-
rather do
then
is
bring it,
just
Counselor.
bring my own list, if you don't mind. I mean, I'm certainly willing to weigh in on yours, but things to me is this broad topic of economic development. We say these words all the time.
So if I can interrupt real quick, this isn't my list. This is a consolidation of multiple sources of feedback. So
Fair enough.
Thank you.
I apologize if I inferred that I thought it was your personal list. Economic development means a lot of things. I think I have personally felt like and still do that there are lots of investments that we can make in formalizing and funding and establishing more strategy around an economic development initiative as a department within the city. I won't dig any deeper than that because it's a rabbit hole. How the city is organized and the employees are managed is the responsibility of the city manager, not any of us. We're here to set policy. We're here to set objectives and goals, and the city manager then is supposed to execute those. And he's supposed to come to us and tell us the tools he needs to do that. So I will just say on economic development, it is coming. The pie's got to get bigger. Otherwise, fees and taxes are going to keep going up. We need to be more formal in our approach to selling our city. We need someone to put a coat and tie on a few days a week and certainly a few days a month and go to Bastrop, Flatonia, LaGrange, Giddings, Austin, and Houston and identify businesses that have fewer than 20 or 25 employees, small manufacturing companies, and sell this city. This city can be sold. Nobody is selling this city. With all due respect, to the staff, they do a great job with grant writing, but we are not formally executing an economic development outreach and selling the town of Smithville. I think one of the other considerations is we need to revisit. The chamber continues, in my opinion, to exhibit signs of dysfunction. They've lost another executive director. We talked a year or so ago about bringing hot tax into the city. I think that's part of an economic development strategy possibly, and I think that just needs to be revisited. I'm not prepared to opine other than we should talk about it again. The second thing after economic development for me is we need to, and I'm using this word carefully because it carries some connotations that I don't intend. We need to do a better job, I think, of integrating the entire town, not just the north side. We need to find a way to engage, and it's very difficult. Very few, if any, physical buildings, activities exist on the south side. I mean, there's very few reasons for people that live on the north side to venture to the south side other than I take my grandkids to MLK Park all the time. I go to the food bank occasionally. I go to the high school down 95. Don't knock on me, but the point is there's a large portion of the town of Smithville that feels disenfranchised. And we need to continually try to find ways to address that. And I think a few examples would be sidewalks along the south side of MLK from 95 all the way over to MLK. I think we need to talk to our county commissioner about sharing the cost of doing a more frequent maintenance program on MLK. A lot of the county trucks are responsible for the road being in the condition it's in. There are things we can do that make sense for the city that would also show that we care and that we're investing a little bit more in the south side. The third thing would be, I believe today, just like I feared a year ago, I think the comprehensive planning process is broken. I don't think it's going to end up with an effective outcome. I think the idea of having the same 5 or 6 or 8 people show up and put yellow stickies on a whiteboard is very similar to what I've seen happen over and over and over in 35 plus years in corporate America when people get in these rooms and you end up with nothing actionable and you spend a bunch of money. And I think we need to revisit that. I think we need a workshop specifically dedicated to a hard discussion about what are we going to get after spending $300,000 on a comp plan. The fourth thing is I think we need a formal written annexation strategy. Talked about that before. It's kind of a subset underneath economic development. I think we need that. I think just like we need someone in leadership, whether it's the city manager, the mayor, certain council members, a delegation of business leaders in our community. We have some of those that go out and sell the city. I think we need to go sit down with those landowners along these major roadways like 71 and make a value proposition to those landowners that if you'll annex into the city, you can still run cows on there and pay $300 a year in property tax. We'll give you wastewater and we'll make the value of your property 10 times as much. And then we then have an annuity for our grandkids, great grandkids in the future. We have that property in our tax base. Next, I think we need a formal succession plan for the city manager. Another issue that's come up in the past, it keeps getting brushed off. We have a plan. We have a plan. I've been in corporate America 38 years. We do not have a formal succession plan. I promise you we do not. And we should, as a council, insist on not risking having the citizens left high and dry if something happens to the city manager and he either decides to retire or he's not able to do the job. And if for no other reason, we have a future where we need someone that's going to be planning for 10 or 15 years. And Robert, if he was sitting right here, would tell you he's not going to be here in 10 or 15 years being city manager. We should have someone who is part of the planning for what our city looks like in 10 years, buying in and helping to formulate that plan today so they're invested in it and we can hold them accountable to executing that over the next 10 years. And the last thing on my list is a kind of a broad category of beautification. I hate walking around town and seeing weeds growing up and cracks in the sidewalk on Main Street. I hate seeing weeds growing up through grates, drainage grates. I hate seeing playground equipment that hasn't been painted and it's chipping. I hate seeing benches that have splinters on them. If someone came to this town and walked around, we're immune to it because we see it all the time. When you walk by the same thing every day, you just become desensitized to it. But if you're really objective and you walk around, it goes back to selling our city. I think we should, that should be one of our focuses, is continually looking at ways to beautify. Having street signs be perfectly straight, having, trash picked up, having trash containers freshly painted, just something where everything looks fresh and neat. And that's it, Mayor.
Jennifer, did you get all that? I heard him say 6 specific talking points, right?
But these same talking
Great stuff,
points you're
Tom.
talking about the south side, these are the same things that Tyrone brought up at our budget that he wanted to see happen on the south side. And a lot of the same things that you brought up are part of your agenda going forward. And they were the things that were brought up during budget season when we all were sitting here making our list of prioritizing the projects and the things going forward. And Robert laid this out and he's welcome as we start the process, which will be coming up again at Time Flies when you're having fun. But these are all things that need to be listed going into the next year, I feel. I feel the comp plan is doing its duty. It may be a slow moving wheel, but people are out there collecting information and bringing it together. It's, I don't even know, when was our other comp plan? I don't have that one in front of me. 2011? 2011. I mean, we're long overdue for a comp plan. So anyway, those are just my thoughts and thank you for bringing all those forward. I think that's great. Kathy, did you want to add anything?
Well, most of the things I suggested are on this list that Mitch brought forward. I feel strongly about updating the city ordinances, and that doesn't seem like something that can happen in the normal budget process. It seems to me that is a project in and of itself that is going to require, I don't know
A lot
who
of detail.
actually is in charge of that
detail.
process, but it's going to take some time. And I'd like to be a part of that process. I feel like our subdivision and our flood prevention ordinance certainly need updating. Our building code is out of date. So that's important to me. I feel like that's a fundamental building block to these other bigger things we have, like the comp plan or land use plan or so I feel like the ordinances definitely need attention. The hot funds situation and what Tom mentioned, I believe we said that the contract between the city and the chamber is coming up anyway. So that should be revisited for sure and any adjustments made. Again, I mentioned just as we sat down about just getting into the rec center project, that's ongoing. And that was also in the council, one of my projects as a council member. I'm still working on the Blue Highway logo sign. I'm continuing to plug away at that and also trying to see if there's a way to offset the cost to the retailers that do qualify for that program. So that's ongoing and I will continue to work on that. So that's pretty much what I had on my list.
Thank you. abuse?
One of the things, when I heard Tom talk about bringing water and wastewater to entice people to come into town, before we can bring that water and wastewater to people, we have to fix our existing system and expand it so we have enough capacity to get there. Right now, we're looking at grants to fix and modify. They're either state nor federal. No matter when you submit them, if you think they're gonna happen overnight, they don't. They are on the time limit of whoever is running that stuff. And like, we just got a grant for something from TxDOT that was 8 years ago when it was submitted, and it just now got approved. They're gonna do the sidewalks on 95. That has been approved.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to come through, but that's gonna be the end of summer. And that grant, I don't know how old that was
That has
before.
been in the play for a while because it was all the utility lines we had to get moved.
Oh.
There were a lot of moving parts to get the 95 widened.
Yeah.
And then, so it takes time for these things to happen, and especially since we're applying for grants, we're getting help. Clara Beckett, our county commissioner, has helped us along the way for many different grants we have received, and improvements are happening. So it just takes time.
Well, and the other thing is, on MLK, the county does use that road a lot. I think it is a good idea to sit down with Clara Beckett and say, what can you do and how can you move sideways and back
scaring me.
and forth here and do that? I think that's a plan that could happen. I also want to see, as for the ordinances, I agree with you. I mean, they're like 1997, okay? But again, I say, next month, they're in the queue with the comp plan. I want to see what they're going to bring to us. I know that Tim Jenkins, smart man, and they've done this before with other cities. I want to see what they're going to bring forth and how that's going to be.
So Jimmy, they have already actually stated that they're
I have the
looking
email.
at the various ordinances, the subdivision ordinance and.
Hold on, let me pull up the email what I've got in my stuff here.
Got enough room?
Okay.
I'll share with you.
Okay. Please note that the initial zoning and ordinance renew is currently in process. That is directly from Jerry. Okay, I've been with Jill talking about this for the past month and a half. That's why I had this brought out. This is the latest and greatest from Jill. It has all the different meetings, everything that's gone through, how they're approaching it, what they're doing. And from what I can tell from Jerry, what her memo is here, in February, we're going to get the strategic update. And it's not 18 months. I mean, I believe the process was 18 months. We should have something, I would think, by end of summer or end of the year here, where we have something we can vote on and look at. And it's also got to go out to the public again. I mean, we do have to take this in some sort of town hall and let everybody hear what's going on. I think we owe that to every individual, not just to the people in this room, but make it so everybody can hear the ordinances, how we're updating, and what the future is going to look like. So I think that's real important. To me, impact fees and the PID are the things that stand straight out to me. Those are the ones that our eyes as a council should be on right now. We need to make sure that those get done and move forward, whether it is a PID ordinance that we move forward with, or if we decide that we don't even want a PID. There's a lot of information here that we're going to have to digest in a short period of time. So that needs to be center focused by what we're doing right now.
I'll open it up for citizen comments.
I need to make a few comments.
Go ahead.
Apologies for the tardiness. Just made it back from Houston alive. Thank you. Good opportunity to give folks an update as to where we are. But I want to challenge the council about just before Christmas, maybe a little after Christmas, I sent out an update on the 57 goals and objectives and plans that the council, the citizens, and my staff developed. We spent 5 months having budget meetings. 3 of those were identifying and prioritizing what was important to y'all. And the August, 15th meeting, each council member gave what was important. And that was a culmination of input received from citizens, constituents, whomever. I think you're doing a disservice not to go back and address what we've already documented as priorities before you start adding. Many of the things on your list are already on this prioritization. So if you don't at least start here, I don't think you're following the process. So I have no problem adding things, but you need, to share in the spirit of transparency, of the 27 priority 1 projects, 33% of those have already been completed. So we're making progress. It just seems like to me, and I'm gonna be open here, that y'all haven't given me any input. Hey, good job, thanks, great. Or even looked at that or communicated this to the citizens. And I think that's the service.
I'll make a comment, please, Mayor. One is we should retain the right. In fact, we have the authority to change our priorities at any given point. And I won't disagree that we went through a process. The city manager wasn't here when I made comments at the beginning. One of the challenges, and I'll say this again for his benefit, one of the challenges, as he knows, in the budget process is we end up finding ourselves on the shot clock when it comes to getting our revenue projections from the county. And if you can segment out a discussion, a standalone discussion, very high level about strategic initiatives, separate from the budget process, there's some value in that because you don't feel like that everything you're talking about necessarily is supposed to be solved in this budget year. Nobody has suggested that any of the things, I certainly didn't suggest any of the things that I mentioned were necessarily going to be solved. Some of them can't be solved in a year. Some of them will take 10 years to solve. So I hear what you're saying. I think maybe there's a little over defensiveness here. Nobody is intending, wait, let me finish, please.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I'm gonna get ready.
Nobody is intending to intentionally not give credit for progress that's been made. This meeting is simply about talking about things that the council members think are important initiatives. Doesn't in any way minimize the list that was put together previously or the work that's been accomplished. It's just
It's
additive.
not about credit. It's about.
Well, you asked, what you specifically said, I would like to see you give some credit for all the stuff that's been done. So I assume that you
No,
might
no, it's not all
want
about
credit.
credit. What it's about, the
33% of
priorities
the
and-
things done.
Yeah, and if you're not sharing this with the community, and it'll be in my monthly report next, but the point here is the projects and plans that my staff work on for, 90 days drive the budget. The project and plans that you guys want drive the budget. And it feels, this may not be the case, and I agree, you have any time the right to go back and take a look at, do these make sense? But not even addressing these 53 projects, I think we need to talk about
But
that.
Robert, this meeting was not called to evaluate the progress on the list. It was simply to talk about what we as council members thought were strategic initiatives going forward. There was no guarantee that anything that came out of this meeting would even find its way on a list. It's just a good habit for council members in a public setting to occasionally talk about these without the constraints that I think are inherent when you're doing it around the budget. That's the only point I was trying to make.
To reiterate, the purpose of tonight, it was not to be a critique of anything. It's an opportunity for us to have and we're certainly having a healthy discussion so far, because we're learning stuff tonight that not all of us knew. We're getting some parts and parcels and pieces. So just want to go back to that this is not a critique. This is an opportunity for us to discuss and help prioritize or refocus as we move into this year's processes. And part of a couple of the things that were listed here was an evaluation of those processes. And so if we were to talk about the budget process, I think, and I don't know, Robert, what you were able to hear coming in, but and some of the discussions we've had about the budget process is that we have to wait on the numbers from the state before we can make any fruitful progress towards that. But I would say that we could go ahead and decide if we chose to, as a council, look at making sure that we have at least two, if not three different versions of a budget proposal that would include, for instance, and I'll throw this number out, a 5% decrease in spending. Maybe scenario B is in revenue neutral and scenario C is the one that we've typically followed, which seems to be, let's do a 5% increase and then we'll raise the property taxes as necessary to fund it. I would ask that we discuss that and maybe that we come forward with a change to that process. And maybe we can cut down on the number of meetings if we go ahead and prepare coming into it with more than one scenario that's only driven by the number that were given by the state in May, I believe.
Fair enough. So the things that I'm looking at that you wanted to add, maybe this is my misunderstanding about this meeting, but the things that you want to add, is this for the next year's budget process or you want to do it this year? Because I see a big problem with some of these things with just funding them. You know, redoing the subdivision plan and we don't have a lot of spare money this year. So if it's talking about what we want to do in FY 25, 26, wonderful. If you're going to start adding things to the list that's already been created, what don't you want done? That's my concern.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's part of this process right now. You know, if we want to move forward with making adjustments, it was, to be honest with you, Robert, I didn't go through the 57 items there because I think it's a very, very well-founded list.
Okay.
What I was saying tonight, the opportunity is for us to discuss that and see if we want to refocus or not. These are not necessarily going to be added to anything. We may come out of this meeting and do nothing, but we're having what I consider to be already a very healthy discussion.
All right, we ready for citizen comments? We ready for citizen comments? Go ahead.
First,
No, I'm good.
first I have Caroline Noya.
Hi, Caroline Noya, 706 Mill Street. I just basically wanted to hear what y'all had to say because I wasn't really sure from the agenda what was going to be said. But I thought maybe y'all were trying to move ahead with some of your items that you'd talked about ahead of the comprehensive plan. And because I've been on several of these comprehensive plan meetings that have been held over the past 5 or 6 months. And yeah, it is a lot of the same people coming, but I haven't seen, if they're happening, I haven't seen them. Town hall meetings that we've discussed for the past 5 or 6 or 7 years for various city council members to have with the citizens on both sides of the tracks and up on the hill. I haven't seen that happen yet. Have they happened that I haven't seen? Is my question. That's another way to get citizen involvement. That's it. Thank you.
To that point, Mayor, if I may say, that could be something that we decide that we need to focus on. Maybe we do establish a series of town hall meetings where we do outreach instead of requiring citizens to come here. That could be something that we come out of as a priority from this meeting, but I certainly appreciate you bringing that up.
I feel like that's how you came with this list that you've been reaching out and people reaching out to you is how you established this list. I mean, as far as having town halls, and I feel Jill, Caroline, Judy, Janice, we post the meetings, we
Yeah,
put them
I
out
think
there.
the-
We don't, I
yeah, I
think we
think the
try
mayor-
to bring.
Yeah, I mean, I think this
together.
is, I mean, it's town hall versus a meeting like this, a little bit semantics. The difference is some of the legalities around that, you know, posting an agenda and having a quorum and that sort of stuff makes the town hall unique. But if you think about it from a practical standpoint, this is a meeting with a single agenda item, which is really pretty wide open, which is to talk about what's important to the city. You know, and it said 2025, which I understand might imply that we were talking about the budget. It was not my intention that this discussion was going to necessarily impact the already approved 2025 budget. That was informed by the list that you referred to. However, I reserve the right, I may not get the votes, but I certainly reserve the right today, tomorrow, next week, or next month to change my mind and think that we should reallocate dollars and do something different. And, you know, it'll be up to the council to decide whether they agree with that. So I don't ever want to give up the right to change if we think it warranted. But these things are almost to a T, at least on my list, not accomplishable in 12 months. They're not even accomplishable, and certainly not accomplishable in 9 months. So to me, this feels for me very much like an opportunity for the public to come and just talk about what they think is important to them. That's what we're doing. And I actually like hearing from colleagues because we are restricted. We can't 2 or 3 or 4 of us get together at Old World and say, what do you think? It's against the law. So the only way we can conduct business in the city, the only way we can do your business is have a meeting. And it has to be a meeting that has a posted agenda of 72 hours, I guess, whatever the time limit is before. So there's some benefits to a town hall, but there's also some constraints because we don't get the benefit of each other's feedback because we can't do that without risking.
I get that.
Just to
I
clarify.
get that, but I think the city council going out to the citizens is more important, well, not, is as important as the citizens coming here. That way, I think there's more of a 2-way dialogue or 3-way, 4, 5, or 10-way dialogue because you're going into their territory because they don't want to come here, the proverbial they. So I think you might get more information from the citizens by going to the churches and to the schools and to their
Well,
communities.
I will tell you that I left a citizen meeting that started at 3:30 at my house that ended right before this. And some of the things that I added to my list at 10 till 5 were one of those things came from that citizen meeting. So I do, not as much as I would like. I don't think any of us are able to do it as much as we wish, but you're right. Going and finding leaders or people in the community that you think are well connected and leverage their network to get feedback from them is an effective tool for me. I have those 8 or 10 people that I think have 10 or 15 people in their sphere of influence and they give good feedback that they're hearing from other people. And that's, what a couple of these items where they came from. So I agree with you.
Councilmember Etheridge, that clarification regarding strategic initiatives going forward out, 12 to 18 months. When you hear short term, I'm thinking 3 to 6 months. That's short term in my world. But 12 to 18, yes. So some of the items on here are appropriate for consideration in the future. That was my misunderstanding that we were just kind of trashing all this work that you already did to start up a new list.
No,
And-
it certainly wasn't, I don't think the intention, it certainly wasn't mine, and it wasn't my understanding of the intention. I do think that there are things, when you have long-term strategic goals, they're always comprised of a number of steps. You don't just go from step 1 to step 50, you go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's going to be potentially some things that we should do today, and I think we probably are doing under the current set of objectives and budget that will contribute to a strategic goal that won't be accomplished for several years. The impact study or impact fees, I really thought Councilmember Jenkins' discussion about water and wastewater infrastructure and about PIDs and impact fees is really probably better summarized as just how are we going to finance infrastructure? That's the issue. That's the strategic issue is how are we going to finance our infrastructure to accommodate growth? That's a problem statement and it encompasses all of those things. A PID is one of those, a MUD is one of those, bonds, taxes, there's all sorts of things, impact fees, there's all sorts of things that fall underneath that. But that's an example in my mind of a strategic goal that is very important to the city and won't be accomplished in 12 months, but it has steps that need to be undertaken. And if we don't all agree that is a strategic goal that we prioritize, then it doesn't give us the ability to inform Robert. He knows if that's the goal, he knows what has to happen over the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to accomplish that. And so when it comes budget time, he knows how to staff for it. He knows how to hire subject matter experts for it, all of those things. So I do think that this is not intended, nor ever was intended to be a review of accomplishments of the prior list. It's just a chance to talk about things that we should be focused on.
I'd like to mention one thing. A minute ago, you talked about people on the south side being disenfranchised. For the last 2 years, that's one thing I work on every other week. I'm at the food bank handing out vegetable boxes, talking to everyone that comes to the food bank to see what do you need? What's going on here? Well, we want these lawns mowed. We'd like to have this cut down. I have never had a problem going to Edward if there's anything to do where they can't see the right of ways, they feel like they're not safe somewheres. That has always been gone forward. I watched when Janice Bruno, when she did the housing huddles, we were on that side of town. It was disenfranchised. The one meeting where they told us that you're just here to steal the land from the south side. We got a lot of input out of that meeting. We really did. There are people that are reaching out to the south side and reaching out to people. That's why we got BAE to come in, was me talking to Susan Goodry, her saying, hey, I want to be annexed because I need police protection because the county's not doing it. So we work to get them born again back in. And that's some of the stuff we really need to do more on a daily basis. I know I'm retired. I have more time to do that. And I don't mind doing that. I think it's a thing that has to happen all the
I
time.
want to be clear from my perspective. Nothing I said was intended to be an indictment on anyone. It was simply a statement to remind us to always be cognizant of the reality. One of the realities, we have a railroad track that separates the town. Ain't nobody's fault. We have a railroad. There used to be that Main Street kind of went across the tracks, I think, years ago before LCRA did it. That's what I've been told. I certainly wasn't here, but there's physical barriers that create the problem. It's not anybody's fault. We should always just be aware of it because we represent the entire town and we need to understand what the needs are, the concerns of the entire town are. And if there are ways when we are thinking about strategic long-term plans, we need to keep that in mind to make sure that we remind ourselves, let's always be looking at balancing. When we do improvements in this town, let's make sure that we're thinking about, is it balanced?
Yes, we are all working together and I believe we are doing.
I think we're seeing the power of this format tonight because when we go into specific council meetings with specific agenda items, we're restricted to that discussion. So this has kind of been a wide ranging free for all, but I'm certainly listening and learning. And I do think that this is not about critiquing what's been done in the past, but it's about us getting better at all we do every day. And I'm really enjoying listening to each one of these items, which we touched on most of them. There's a few we haven't gotten to yet.
Okay, thank you. Do we have someone else?
Yes, I have Lee Kilgore.
Ms. Kilgore, where are you? There you are. You're right there. She's right.
Ms. Lee,
Welcome.
excuse me, Councilman Jameson, I just, again, wanted to say some of the things that you put on here were already involved in the goal setting that we did. So I, again, was confused. Is this something new? No, actually, we're working on 4 of the items that you already have listed. And that's cool. I think I need to get this list out someplace where people can see it. It'll be in next month's report. Any other suggestions where you want the citizens to see this list?
Put it in your next month's report.
I think things like that, we need to have a board at the rec center that says city activities, and that
Okay.
stuff is put up there because a lot of people go through the rec center. Because a lot of people work out in the mornings, a lot of people bring their kids there. They will see things like that.
Yeah, and one of the limiting factors that you mentioned, someone mentioned about condemnation and cleaning, we cut that in the budget. So next year, if we want to put some more money in that line item, so we can get some of these dilapidated homes and tall weeds taken care of as we go forward, yeah?
Tyrone?
I was just gonna tell Robert, just put it in next month, review or whatever you want to do to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can get it out to people like that.
Hi, Lee Kilgore, 403 Ramona. Let's start. My objective today was to talk about Enclave. Once Enclave comes, Tom McCullough has talked about others will follow. Tim, what's his name? Todd. Wasn't in my minutes. Todd says others will follow. We need to get it in here and others will follow. The concern is about what do you do in your annexed areas that you cannot manage wastewater, you cannot manage a volunteer fire department that may or may not have enough trucks, the insurance that is going to go to those people who have been annexed
in a volunteer fire department city without the tools needed to fight fires. We have cut tremendous amounts out of our budget. Is that short-sighted for a long-term goal? If our goal is to be an extension of Bastrop, if other developments are coming, our budget and our thought process for how do we plan the accommodated, I was going to say FTEs, but that's work, people who are going to come to Smithville, we need to be able to manage that. And we can't look at cutting fire, cutting city services, et cetera, because we haven't thought through all those processes. And so wastewater, your subdivision ordinance, your planning and zoning ordinances, your annexing, those are all fantastic things to work on. But if you don't have infrastructure with city services to be able to meet the need, it doesn't matter who comes. We're not going to be able to afford to provide for those people and give a level of service to the people who exist today in addition to the others coming. And I want that to be forefront. To copy it off of Caroline Noya's comments about a town hall. Town hall allows us to have a conversation without the threat of y'all having a decision that comes up at the last minute where we're not informed or there's not enough people. You think about tonight's meeting, how many people are in here that are true, just straight up citizens or part of the city? Exactly. This is an important feature and we don't have input except for the people who are currently talking about it, right? So 2 cents. Thank you so much.
Thank you. But you could have spoke longer. Who's our next person?
Janice Bruno.
I like a check for me. Anybody else want to give me a check? We have a fundraiser this Saturday.
Janice Bruno, 800 Burleson Street. Okay, stratego, it's a military term, strategic. It comes from the Greek Hellenistic. It's a general, military general. Well, I'm going to come speaking to you tonight as a colonel, okay? When we think strategic, and I've been in the Workforce Training Center now for a year, 2 years, but as the executive director for a year. And I think regionally, okay? So last evening, we were able to brief the Bastrop County Economic Development Corporation. There were about the same amount of people that were in the room, okay? And they were speaking about important things. But one of the things, they have a corporation that just discusses just this, you know, what's going to happen as far as economic development goes. So I'm looking at the list tonight, and I'm looking at these things, and I look at things in 3 ways. They're strategic, they're operational, or they're tactical. They're things that, you know, day-to-day kind of stuff. So on this list, I see 3 things that I feel are very strategic and are important. And of course, the first one, of course, is the economic development for the city of Smithville. And I think what we've got to do as far as economic development goes from a workforce perspective is we need to look at the data and what's going on with the data within the region. Because not only do we service Bastrop County, but I get to go to all the meetings in Caldwell County, Fayette County, and Lee County. And they're looking at the same things we're looking at. But in Bastrop County, the data right now is showing, okay, what's important, retail, which brings in your sales tax, correct? So when we run the data out of Lightcast, we're seeing that retail is like the number one. It's the number one thing that right now we need in the region. There's over 4,017 businesses right now in Bastrop County. How many businesses do we have in Smithville? Do we know? Exactly. How many businesses? Out of that 4,017 folks that are businesses, 70% of those businesses right now are less than 20 people. All right? Your 4 big businesses are Bastrop Independent School District, SpaceX, Boring, what's the other one? Starlink. Everybody else is 20 or less employees, all right? We're pulling this data. So if you've got to focus on small businesses and we want small businesses to come, why aren't they coming? I say it's because they need some more education, they need some training, they need a leg up. So if we can focus on small businesses, and I'm doing this from a workforce perspective, and we can use our innovation center is going to be a gem to help these small businesses. The second gem that we have here is healthcare. We have a hospital, we have a small clinic, we have dental offices, which is fantastic because guess what? Healthcare is the other #1 industry, all 4 counties. Okay, so we've got that. And then we look at our airport. The airport is a gem, and we're not utilizing that airport like we need to utilize it. We're not, no, Robert's done a great job. And I think, yes, let's add on to the runway. Let's do the things we've got to do. So that's strategic. And I know you're already looking at that, Robert. And what else can we do out at the airport? Because we have it and some little municipalities don't. And then the fourth thing we need to look at is our workforce. And what are those things that we really need to train people for? And we have all the data, so we sort of know where we got to focus. So we're looking at 4 big things. And we have a workforce training center. We have an innovation center for our small businesses. We have an airport, and we have a hospital. We have some those things strategically we focus on. Some of the other things that we talked about in this meeting are more at the tactical level, like your ordinances and that kind of stuff. Those are day-to-day kind of things. Those are already getting worked on. So we can focus on those things and base everything off the data for the region, for Bastrop County, because we've had a 30% growth since 2023 to 2028. It's going to be 30%. I mean, we're growing. And there's not enough workforce for all the jobs that are coming here. Thank you very much.
Let me make a comment. I was at the presentation last night. Her and Alan did a great job. It was very well received. On those statistics, it's 75% of the businesses have less than 10 employees. 90% have less than 20. That was a statistic that shocked me. In Bastrop County, how many businesses are less than 10 employees? So my point earlier about putting a coat and tie on and going and recruiting small manufacturing businesses, those are the types of businesses that will come to a small town like Smithville or even Bastrop for a little bit longer because they're a relatively big fish in a small pond. They get lost in big cities like Austin and Houston. They don't feel the love. We have a lot to offer those types of businesses. So anyway, it was a great presentation.
Thank you.
And they respected you too. I heard lots of feedback from people about that.
Mayor, if I
Thank you.
may add to that, I think that, now this is the last item on the list that I ended up wording it, evaluate, enhance economic development grant prioritization plan, small business recruitment, selling Smithville process. So I think it's coming home that this is something that we want to pull out and maybe enhance and refine that process in the near future, however many weeks or months we may decide that that's something that we want to put our resources and focus against.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Come on. I believe you're also on the comp plan, aren't you? I believe I see your name on the comp plan. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I want to reinforce what Tom said and what Mitch said. I did a little research project about a month and a half ago. And I used a FOIA request, and I requested all of the information, written, verbal, emails that came out of our grant and economic development department for 2 years, 2023 and 2024. Took about 6 weeks, that's fine. Okay. What I found when I analyzed that data was that 95% of the correspondence was reactive versus proactive. So we would get from Austin, there's a group, I don't remember the name of them, say, here are the opportunities that floated across Austin. And they sent all these opportunities out to surrounding communities, Smithville, Fayetteville, okay. Well, of all the background I read, less than 5% were initiated by the department. The responses were, someone reached out to us, the hotel, that didn't happen, okay? So you get to looking at it and you have to ask the question, to our point, who's selling Smithville? If you're in sales, it's not about hoping the phone rings, okay? It's about dialing for dollars. And I just want to reinforce that data because I found it A, interesting and B, disappointing. So just welcome to reality. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you. Will you just go visit Jennifer? Thank you. But thank you for that. Did everybody speak who wanted to say something, even after things were set up here? If you would like to speak, we welcome you.
Then I would guess that the next step is that we decide, are we going to recap this and stack rank it and do a follow-up from it? Jennifer and I were discussing this afternoon in terms of what we can actually do tonight. I don't know we can do more than,
Would you be willing, and again, this is more of a suggestion to the council as well as a request of Councilmember Jameson. Would the council be in favor of allowing Mitch to work with Jennifer to perhaps just summarize what we talked about tonight and then present it at the next council meeting? So we have an opportunity just to review almost like minutes and kind of affirm that this is kind of what we talked about. That way we have something documents what we talked about.
I certainly am amenable to that. That's why Jennifer, we had talked about it earlier. I said, I hope you can write fast because we
recorded
need to take some
anyway,
good
so
minutes. Yeah, I'm certainly willing to do that.
We don't need a motion or anything, I don't think. I think it's just, do we agree? Is everybody okay with just summarizing and then having it put on the agenda just to summarize what we talked
As
about?
long as the things that are already in progress that we have already pointed out that we had brought to the table, as long as those things are already noted that we are in the process of working on these, it is a long-term solution. So most of the things you have on here, we are working on. And so Jennifer, if you want to carve out some time and y'all make an appointment, then
Well, there'll probably be minutes for this anyway by requirement, right? So we'll have minutes. So I don't know that we need anything special. We'll have a chance to look at it. I will reiterate, though, the purpose of this meeting isn't to pass judgment on an existing list. And so I don't think that anybody is expecting that anything's going to go on this list is intended to be critical of what is already on the list. It's simply an opportunity to sit down together as a council in a public setting and just talk about what we think is important. Nothing more than that.
all
At
right.
least for
So-
me, it's not.
So at the end of the day, discussion and possible action on city council strategic initiative 2025, no action taken. And so I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, folks, before you leave, I have an announcement. I've been handling another emergency management situation in Austin. The Longhorn Dam, an actuator has been stuck in the open position so we're going to get some water that's coming down. They've had to close Palmer Lane to put a crane on there to block off the section that's open so they can fix the mechanical issue with the actuator. But we're going to expect to see probably 10 to 14 foot rise in the next 24 hours. Our flood, our bank level is 10 feet. Our flood stage is 20. So nothing really starts happening until you hit the 20 and above. So it should be minimal impact. But if you hear about it on the news, because it's going to be on the news, we do have water coming down. Now, the concern from the meetings I was attending was that what about the 60% chance of rain that's coming? How is that going to add on to the issues coming down? And the preliminary calculations say it's not going to be an issue for at least Smithville, maybe Fisherman's Park.